Thank you, Madam President. What a great thrill I have today. And I know that you have this on your table, so I'm going to ignore it. I want to tell you a story about Liz. I've known Liz, she was on television when I was on the council. When she worked for Mayor Hightower, but she was only 5 years old when she started. When she was on Mayor Hightower's staff, I served on a board with her and got to know her a little bit. But about 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to get to know Liz by working with her much more closely. She recruited me to serve on the board of the Highland Restoration Association, where she was and still is a member of the board. What I learned about Liz then is that not only is she bright and engaging, she is a can-do person that gets things done in a pleasant way, has a great way of communicating, a terrific sense of humor. And I am privileged to call her my friend. Our topic today is Downtown Rising, Why Downtown Time is Now. And I would suggest to you that part of the reason for that is our speaker, Liz Swaine.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. I am so proud to be here today on Swedish Meatball Day. I know how popular Swedish meatballs are to Rotarians, and I'm just so grateful to be here today. I am also very excited to be able to talk to you about downtown because it's very close to my heart for a number of reasons. And I welcome you to a wonderful facility in downtown. I love this quote. Former Indianapolis mayor said once, "You can't be a suburb of nothing," when talking about why downtowns are important. And when you think about how you describe where you live, you're talking about, well, we live south of downtown or north of downtown, or we live in that gated community that's 15 miles down the interstate from downtown. So if you don't have a strong, vibrant, cool, exciting downtown, then you really don't have a lot going on for you in other parts of the area. This is a view of downtown on high. I love looking at this every single day. Downtown is the symbolic, it is the managerial, it is the cultural, it is the financial, it is the governmental center of not only Shreveport, but of our region. I would ask you, if anyone is referring to downtown, generally they're not talking about downtown Bossier or downtown Coshada. Generally, when they use the reference to downtown, they are talking about downtown Shreveport. And I love downtown because downtown rocks. It is a cool place to be. On any given day, Monday through Friday, we have a lot of people working downtown in a lot of these different high-rise buildings and in a lot of our historic buildings in downtown. And they're doing everything from banking to governmental work, courts, all sorts of things. Strong entrepreneurial spirit in our downtown. As I mentioned, downtown is the seat of a lot of things. Most recently, we've gotten this great facility that I know you've all heard of called COHAD. And it's all about taking those entrepreneurs who up until now have sat in their back row, in their slippers, in their spare bedroom, working on great projects. And now they have a place to come and talk to other like-minded entrepreneurs. And we're seeing an explosion of great ideas and millennials who are taking these ideas that prior to now, they haven't had anybody to bounce it off of, and they have other like-minded individuals. Success stories are abounding in downtown Shreveport. We are seeing tremendous amounts of downtown interest, not only because of things going on in Shreveport, but because of things going on across the country. When you talk to especially young people, I refer to millennials a lot, because millennials are the up-and-comers. They're the young people who are going to be filling the jobs. They're going to be the ones making the money so that others of us can retire and go do other things. But they are almost to a person interested in opportunities in their downtowns, in residential, in business opportunities, in those entrepreneurial opportunities. Downtown buildings are in short supply in terms of buildings of a certain size, buildings of a certain style. They are changing hands at a rapid clip. We're seeing a number of historic rehabilitations downtown. One of the things that we have going for us that so many cities do not is because of a number of different reasons, some of them not great reasons. Back in the 1980s when we saw oil and gas go down, 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 and so many people were leaving town, well, that was the era that our historical buildings were being knocked down at a fairly rapid clip for the new high-rise buildings. Well, when there was no reason for the big high-rise buildings, that meant that our historic buildings managed to survive. We have a vast inventory of beautiful historic buildings in downtown, and we're seeing those buildings now being historically rehabilitated through some historic tax credit opportunities afforded by both the state and the federal government. We're seeing a number of residential investments in downtown. I had one of our local developer investors come up to me last week and he said, you know, I had a great meeting last week out at the Cyber Innovation Center, and I was talking to some young, dynamic people, none of whom were from the Shreveport area, all of whom had recently moved in. And he said, what is the most important thing we can do for you to make you happy in your new home? And they said, we need more downtown residential. We need more cool, urban, hip spaces in downtown to live because that's where we all want to live, and right now we don't have those opportunities. So we're working to make that happen. You've also probably heard about this new place, this 9-block area called Shreveport Common in the west side of downtown. This is the new art and culture district. Central Art Station is right in the middle of it. All sorts of things happening there. The monthly unseen events are happening in Shreveport Common. Shreveport Common, the buzz is there for Shreveport Common. Needs a little bit of a jump start to get going. And again, I had mentioned Cohab. So let's get specific about some of the things going on in downtown Shreveport, some of the very exciting things. This looks so different than it has looked for the past 40 years. This is the old Sears building in the 600 block of Texas, right across the street from Robinson Film Center. Those of you who've looked at the Sears building, or maybe you haven't even looked at it for the past few years, because it's been sort of blah. It's been blocked up, boarded up. All of these windows were bricked up. Now, rumor has it that those windows were bricked up probably, I would say, back in the late 40s to 50s when air conditioning was added in that building. No need for windows once air conditioning was added. Who needed to look outside? Everything you needed was inside in the Sears building. Every single thing you needed was there. But it wasn't as beautiful a building, so the owner, a gentleman out of New Orleans named Roland von Kernatowski, say that 3 times fast and you'll win a prize, has that building now, and he is unbricking all those beautiful windows. The natural light will once again flow in. The plans for this building are residential on the upper floors, a great music venue in the basement because he also owns the Tipitinas Club in New Orleans, and then retail on the ground floor. And as you can see, that's moving along. Now, what in the heck is this? Well, these are the other 2 buildings right next to the Sears building. Those of you who remember downtown a little bit know that right next to the Sears building, there was a building that had collapsed. The roof had collapsed. All that was left of that building was the front facade. So what Roland did, instead of knocking that building down like other people had talked about doing and making a parking lot that really would not have accommodated that many cars, he is rebuilding that building around the facade. So what you're seeing over there are actually the floors going in, and that is the view from the 2nd floor of this building, which I call the Urn Building. And that building is right across from Abby Singer's Robinson Film Center. It's got the giant urns on the front of it. It was actually constructed around the turn of the last century by an Austrian immigrant named Albert Zodiac. Mr. Zodiac was the father of the electric streetcar system in Shreveport. It's because of him we had that wonderful system of streetcars that your fathers and your moms and your grandmothers have told you about. And that building, that 3rd building, the Urn Building, was very close. I heard what you said to Jack Sharp. Jack was not here when the streetcars came in. Were you here? Don't admit that. This building It's looking wonderful. And this is what it looks like from inside the Urn building looking at it. It's got the great display windows right in front of it. Now those display windows were probably added to that building, I would guess, in the 1940s. Those are not original to that building. But those two buildings that are right beside the Sears building will be a combination of office space, commercial space, retail space. Another residential opportunity in downtown, the Johnson building. It used to be called the Artist Johnson building. And interesting, I see you smiling. Have you been in the Johnson building? There's an interesting story about the Johnson building. It was the very first of downtown Shreveport's buildings to be air conditioned in 1941. Don't you know that everyone wanted to work in the Johnson building? I would have killed someone to work in the Johnson building. I can't even imagine working in one of our downtown buildings unair conditioned. Holy smokes. The Johnson building is owned by a gentleman out of Monroe. He owns this building, the Slattery building, which is the big neo-Gothic building that's right across the street from the Caddo Parish Courthouse. At one point, the Slattery building was the tallest privately owned building in the state of Louisiana. It was so named after Mr. Slattery, who was 80 years old when he completed the Slattery building. And there's a great story. He was standing on the sidewalk, peering up at his building, all 17 floors of it. And a flapper, this was in the 1920s, a flapper walked by and said, "Hey, old man, you never seen a big building before?" Well, history didn't record what he said to her. But, you know, he had seen a big building before because he built it. He also built the old Woolworth building, which is in the 500 block of Texas. And by the way, the rent that he got on the 99-year lease on that Woolworth building allowed him to then build the Slattery building. Residential is hugely popular downtown. Take, for example, the old Ogilvy Hardware, which now looks so good when you're coming into downtown from the south. It's got the saltwater pool and very elegant. Ogilvy is what's called affordable living. It's not vouchers. It's not Section 8. It's rent and salary control. It's at 100% occupancy with a waiting list. 100% occupancy with a waiting list. And they've had to turn double digits plus away of people who make too much money to live there. Those people who make too much money to live there then come into downtown and say, what's available? And that's what we're working with developers to get additional opportunities for market rate residential in downtown. We like to say, at both of our boards, both the Downtown Development Authority and the Downtown Shreveport Development Corporation, that we're saving history one building at a time. And there are a number of you in here who are actively saving history one building at a time. Don Rosinski is working on a building now. I keep talking to my friend Harry. Harry's talking about doing some work in a building downtown. We have others of you who are very interested in beautiful buildings. And people are, as I mentioned, purchasing those buildings and doing great things. You have probably seen the incredible work that the city has done on Municipal Auditorium. What an amazing facility that is. All of these that have an asterisk by them have had work done on them in the past year or have work being done on them currently. So there you can see the number of buildings that are actively being rehabilitated. All of these are historic buildings, and every one we are saving one building at a time. I mentioned Shreveport Common. Shreveport Common is such an opportunity for the city of Shreveport. Those of you who've lived in the city of Shreveport for any period of time, you're all familiar with sort of the west edge of downtown, that area around the old B'nai Zion, the Scottish Rite Temple, the Fairmont Apartments. And you know that the first word that comes to mind when you're thinking of that area is probably not cool or arty or culture. It may be blighted. It may be, ugh. It may be, I don't know, it's a little scary. The opportunities there have been proven by a market assessment that we recently completed with a group out of New Orleans called TNG. And what the market assessment showed is that the same desire that we are seeing in the rest of downtown for residential, for retail, and commercial spaces also applied to Shreveport Common. Just recently, I had the chance to go to Santa Fe, Mexico. Now, Santa Fe, it's apples and oranges. We're different, yes, but Santa Fe has taken a blighted area of an old rail yard and has created an art and culture district that, interestingly enough, they call the rail yard. I don't know how they came up with that. Very creative. Very similar to the plan and the concept for Shreveport Common. What is special about Shreveport Common? Well, if you take a look at some of the buildings there, these are buildings that can't be replicated for any amount of money. This is the old B'nai Zion Temple that stands right on the corner of Cotton and Common Street. For those of you who've driven past it thousands of times, that's what it looks like inside. That's what it looks like inside. That's what those windows look like inside. And for a building that has sat vacant for a number of years, it is in remarkable, remarkable shape. So that is one of the buildings that are potentially available for rehabilitation, and certainly at some point needs to be rehabbed to save the remarkable history that is present there. This is another one of the buildings in Shreveport Common. Are most of you familiar with the old Arlington Hotel? Every historic building has a fascinating story. The Arlington Hotel, built in the 1920s, one of 20 different railroad hotels and boarding houses scattered throughout that area of downtown Shreveport because Union Station was half a block away. Union Station was a huge rail yard that does not exist. The only thing about it that currently exists are some concrete pads. When you're going over the viaduct on Common Street, coming into downtown Shreveport, and you look to your right, you will see some concrete pads, and that is where Union Station used to be. This was built by the Commages family. I talked to the grandson, and he told me that back in the 1920s, when they were first working on this hotel, the contractors who were not bonded back then absconded to Texas with all the contracting money. And so it looked like this hotel would not be able to be finished. Well, about that time, one of the big oil plays up north hit. All these people were flowing into the area, needing a place to sleep. And they said, "We don't mind that these rooms aren't complete. We'll pay you for them anyhow." And because the money was flowing in from that oil play, they were able to finish this hotel, which became a vibrant downtown scene. Some of you may have heard, here on the side of the hotel, the Louisiana Street side, there are several retail spaces. One of the buildings in that retail, one of the businesses was called the Gay 90s Lounge. You don't have to raise your hand if you ever went there. But from what I understand, there were real can-can girls. Were you just nodding at me, Mary? Is that true? There were real can-can girls in the Gay 90s Lounge back in the day. And there is an underground tunnel that goes from the Strand Theater to the Arlington. Now, I'm not going to even surmise what that tunnel would have been used for, but it did come into the Gay 90s Lounge. So I'm just thinking maybe a break at the Strand, you come over to the lounge, you have a nice beverage, you go back to the Strand, you finish watching your movie. I'm sure that's what it was. Oh, by the way, the Arlington, we just did a structural study on the Arlington. The city of Shreveport now has full ownership of this building with clear title. That is very good news. Part of the problem that we have in downtown with some of our buildings is there's very murky ownership. There's not clear title. The buildings are blighted, falling down. The city can't get those buildings out of the hands of those people who won't do anything with them. So the city has gotten control of this building. We've done a structural analysis. Amazingly, everything on here that's brick is absolutely solid. The wooden portion all needs to be replaced. It needs a new roof ASAP, but it can again become a beautiful building. with the right person with the right checkbook. We did something recently called the Pop-Up Project. I hope all of you had the chance to hear about it and maybe show up for it down in the Red River District. The plan for the Pop-Up Project is to take some of our vacant spaces downtown and show how exciting they can be when you put retail and restaurants and other types of businesses in there. We had 100% occupancy in the Red River District for 2 weeks. It was exciting, it was fun, people came out in droves. They loved it. It showed off those spaces. It increased pedestrian excitement downtown, gave people another reason to go to these locations. And with luck, we will see that several of those businesses will eventually decide to locate downtown. That was our first and very successful pop-up. We'll be doing another one in September in the Central Business District, and we'll be doing a third sometime around the holidays in Shreveport Commons. So I would love for all of you to participate by coming out. And again, what we did is we took vacant spaces. This beautiful shot over here is showing the old MacArthur's restaurant, which has been vacant for years, staged as a home decor, furnishings, home decorator store, and it was beautiful. We had a 3D printer in there. We had a pastry chef in there. We also had a jewelry store in there. So a lot of people interested in spaces for retail in downtown. This is one of the things that we wanted to see with the pop-up project, and we did. A lot of people having a great time in the Red River District. The Committee of 100, I've got to give them a shout out. They have decided that one of the pop-up project businesses at the end of the year will be given a grant to allow them free rent for 1 year in downtown Shreveport. So I'm hugely excited about that opportunity. There are a few things that cause me sleepless nights. One of the things is the fact that we love to hear things that sometimes aren't exactly true, and then maybe we'll share that with somebody else before we know if it's exactly true. And so we're constantly fighting rumors. We're constantly fighting rumors. One of the rumors is downtown might be a dangerous place. No, if you look at the numbers from the Shreveport Police Department, it's one of the safest places in the city of Shreveport. So we're always fighting, and we always ask people if they hear something that sounds kind of hinky, give us a call. We will give you all the information that we have available to us. The other thing is lack of parking downtown. If you do a lot of business, you know it can be challenging. And when you're talking about doing historic rehabilitations on buildings like the Petroleum Tower, and the Slattery Building, and the Johnson Building, and the Sears Building, well, heavens to Betsy, where are those people going to park? People are going to be unwilling to pay $1,100, $1,200 for an upscale apartment and park 6 blocks away. They're just not going to do it. So we're working now with the city, with the developers, to come up with some very creative ways to deal with that. History is perishable. You know, we're very lucky. We've got these beautiful buildings, but we only have them for a period of time. Before we know it, they'll be gone. They'll fall in, something will happen, they will burn. So it's very important for us to work as hard and as fast as we can to save these buildings. Some have gotten to the point, unfortunately, they probably cannot be saved. Others definitely can be. We do need to work to save our history. Shame on us if we don't do everything we can to keep these beautiful structures around. It is going to be a busy year. We've got a lot going on downtown. We've got historic district updates. We've got Shreveport Common coming on strong, more pop-up projects, all sorts of things with websites and QR codes. We hope to have this great thing where you can take your phone, scan a code on the front of every building, and learn the history of that building just by walking around downtown. Connect with us. There are not many ways that you can not get hold of us. I think too many nods in that. You can stand on top of a building and yell, and we will even hear you. So anything, any way you want to get in touch with us, you probably can. And I would like to thank you for caring about downtown. It takes, it's trite, we've used it before, but it does take a village. It takes a strong, committed group of people to make a strong, cool, exciting downtown. And it's so important for us to do that. Now, I'm not going to take any questions because we're running out of time, but I am going to show you a couple of cool photographs because everybody loves them. This is the old Woolworth building. This would be in the 1950s, and everybody knows this is right across the street from the Caddo Parish Courthouse. The Woolworth building is still there. The Burt's Shoes building has been lost. It's now just a vacant lot. This, can you tell what this is? At the head down there, that's First United Methodist without a steeple. In Levy's, that is where Petroleum Tower is today. So you are looking west on Texas Street, and you're just about at Market Street where it crosses. So that's what it looked like about 1918. This is called the Doll House, D-O-L-L. It's called Doll because the gentleman's name was Doll. Any of you hazard a guess on where this beautiful home was located? All of you know where the Jody Wagner building is now? Don't we wish that was still there? Hell yeah. Buildings like those, houses like those were all over downtown. All over downtown. And then this, you probably can't see it real well, but it says UNITA, the UNITA Biscuit Building. So you are looking east on Milam Street, roughly at Common Street, looking back. So those are some scenes out of our past. The neat thing is, a lot of this still exists. And it's up to us to make sure that it hangs around for the next generation. So everyone, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you all being downtown supporters. Turn it back over to Carol.